This is Brussels, the heart of NATO and the European Union. Just a few days ago, the skies over this city were locked in chaos, signaling deep panic rather than a show of force. Drones suspected to be of Russian origin targeted civilian airports in Belgium, Brussels, Liège, and sensitive military bases, including Kleine Brogel, which has nuclear capabilities, halting operations.
De Kleine Brogel, daar. 3 keer werden daar drones gesignaleerd en daar liggen ook nucleaire wapens.
This was Putin's war chest, the literal burning of his wallet, the final panic move before setting fire to billions of dollars in frozen Russian assets. The Kremlin's plan was simple: terrify NATO's heart, force the EU to reverse its decision to seize funds. However, this plan turned into one of the most spectacular strategic blunders in recent years. The blackmail backfired the moment it began. Instead of backing down, Brussels played Article 4 of the NATO treaty. "Our territorial integrity is under threat. We are convening urgently" card. And while Putin waited for a fearful phone call from Brussels, the response came directly from Berlin, via a military cargo plane. Across Belgium and Europe, a sense of determination prevailed, mixed with suspicion and anger. On the night of November 9th, the final event that triggered this anger and determination occurred. On Sunday evening, 5 unidentified drones were detected flying for about an hour directly above the cooling towers of the Doel Nuclear Power Plant near the port of Antwerp in Belgium. The Belgian National Crisis Centre, which is currently monitoring the situation, has confirmed the incident. The situation is truly critical right now. The United Kingdom, France and Germany took immediate action. Military aid began flowing into Belgium that weekend. The highest-ranking military officials of these countries reported that military support was delivered to Belgium immediately. So, who is behind this madness, and why now? The answers to these questions lead us to a hybrid war scenario that has been unfolding over the past few weeks, with every step carefully planned. And at the center of this scenario is one name: Vladimir Putin.
Kleine Brogel, daar. 3 keer werden daar drones gesignaleerd en daar liggen ook nucleaire wapens.
This was Putin's war chest, the literal burning of his wallet. The timing and target selection of this operation are critical to understanding the Kremlin's mindset. What happened between November 5th and 7th was not a random attack, but the product of military planning. The first target was Brussels Airport. This is not only Belgium's, but also Europe's political capital's main gateway. Locking it down, taking thousands of civilian passengers hostage, signifies much more than logistical chaos. It is a message saying, "I can get inside your home," and was a psychological attack designed to trigger civilian panic. The second target was Liège Airport. This is one of Europe's busiest cargo hubs. Since the war began, it has also been a key logistical point for military aid to Ukraine. Targeting this location signaled, "I know your supply chains and can disrupt them at will." However, the real message was delivered through military bases. The third target was Florennes Air Base. This is home to Belgium's F-35 fighter jets. Sending a drone to a location housing NATO's most advanced air power was a direct show of force, aimed at NATO's military capabilities. The fourth and most dangerous target was Kleine Brogel Air Base. This base is one of the most sensitive military points on the continent, allegedly hosting US tactical nuclear weapons as part of the nuclear sharing program in Europe. Consider this: Putin's regime, in a panic over frozen funds, is taking the risk of flying drones over a base that is part of NATO's nuclear deterrent. This is not a rational military strategy. It is the all-or-nothing move of a cornered gambler. Their aim was to paralyze decision-makers by striking civilian and military infrastructure simultaneously. They believed Europe was vulnerable to threats in this grey zone, an area that is not quite war but not quite peace either. They were wrong. Very wrong. The bluff was so obvious that German officials did not hesitate to confirm it. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius explicitly stated that these drone observations could be directly linked to the EU's plans to transfer interest income from frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. This was not a suspicion, but a finding. Putin took a military risk on NATO territory to save billions of dollars. The Kremlin's calculation was simple: instill fear, create division within the EU, and delay economic decisions. However, the response they received was the exact opposite of what they expected. Putin's move did not cause panic within NATO, but rather a wave of unity and determination. Instead of cowering and walking away from the table, the Belgian government brought up one of the most serious articles of the NATO treaty, Article 4. It means, they are attacking me, let's decide together what to do. And it is the step before the famous Article 5, i.e. collective defense. While Putin was trying to engage in economic blackmail, he suddenly found himself creating a military threat that triggered NATO's collective security clause. And this Article 4 meeting could be more than just a tedious diplomatic consultation in Brussels. It could be the announcement of a change in military doctrine. According to behind-the-scenes information, the decisions that come out of that meeting could fundamentally change all of the alliance's rules of engagement towards Russia's shadow fleet. The era of observe and report could officially come to an end. The order to hunt and stop could be given. This would mean that standing NATO Maritime Group 1, SNMG-1, patrolling the North Atlantic and the Baltic Sea could be immediately placed on high alert. This situation means that German Sachsen-class frigates, Danish Ivar Huitfeldt-class destroyers, and Norwegian P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft scanning the region could now identify these rusty shadow tankers not just as smugglers, but as potential Trojan horses. The new doctrine will be brutally simple. The slightest electronic or visual evidence that these vessels are being used as drone platforms, sabotaging critical submarine energy and internet cables, or involved in any hybrid operation, as in the Pushpa incident in Denmark, could now trigger not civilian oversight, but direct military intervention. This means NATO warships would have the authority to board these militarized civilian vessels, search them, and seize them immediately if evidence is found. Such a move could cripple Putin's strategy of threatening Europe with his shadow fleet. This decision could effectively transform the Baltic Sea into a NATO lake, trapping Putin's hybrid warfare apparatus in a strategic strangulation before it can even become operational. This was a diplomatic fiasco. If Article 4 was a diplomatic challenge, the military response came immediately from Berlin. Germany saw this blackmail and did not hesitate. The German Luftwaffe's most elite drone hunter experts landed in Brussels immediately. Putin not only failed to save his money, but also triggered the establishment of a new and faster drone defense force in the heart of NATO with his own actions. France and the UK also urgently sent their military support to Belgium. Following Germany, France is also coming to Belgium to help combat drones after a series of drone incidents detected over airports and military bases disrupted Belgian aviation. The French anti-drone team was in Belgium over the weekend. British Chief of the General Staff Richard Knighton said in a statement to the BBC on Sunday that the UK was following France and Germany in providing personnel and equipment to help Belgium counter unmanned aerial vehicle attacks around sensitive facilities. Belgian Defence Minister Theo Franken, Flemish nationalist N-VA, announced the arrival of the French unit during a visit to the Pampa Range military base in Houtalen-Helchteren, Limburg. The German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, immediately dispatched its most elite C-UAS, or drone defense, experts to Belgium. These experts are part of the Luftwaffe's Objectschutz Regiment, or Facility Protection Regiment, elite units. Their mission is to hunt down enemy UAVs using advanced jammers, such as the HP-47 and other detection systems. The significance of this move is as follows. Germany, NATO's greatest power, considered the grey zone threat against an ally as a threat to its own national security and intervened militarily. Putin's blackmail forced NATO to modernize its drone defense overnight. Worse still, Germany immediately announced the establishment of National Rapid Response C-UAS teams, citing this incident as a precedent. While Putin wanted to intimidate Europe, he inadvertently gifted them a new and faster defense shield. This is a strategic own-goal situation. A nuclear power plant. Energy company Engie first confirmed 3, then a total of 5 drones. This is not a civilian losing a hobby drone. This is a deliberate, organized, and highly provocative act. This incident in Belgium is not an isolated case. It was the culmination of a systematic hybrid harassment model that has been escalating for the past 2 months, starting in the Baltic Sea. Putin's strategy of testing nerves had already begun in September in the Baltic. It all started in September, with the closure of Copenhagen Airport due to similar drone harassment. The incident was so serious that Denmark deepened its investigation. and suspicions focused on one of Putin's infamous Shadow Fleet tankers, used to evade sanctions. The suspected vessel, Pushpa or Boracay. Allegedly, this tanker was used as a sea platform to launch drones from a position close to the Danish coast to lock down a NATO country's civilian airport. This suspicion was so serious that French Navy commandos took action. In Danish waters, they intervened with a military operation against the Pushpa tanker on suspicion of this hybrid attack against the civilian infrastructure of a NATO country, and seized the ship. This incident also means that Putin's Shadow Fleet is now recognized not only as a tool for circumventing economic sanctions, but also as a military asset, used against NATO. This paved the way for NATO to treat these ships not as civilian vessels, but as enemy military platforms. Putin handed NATO the justification it needed to hunt down his Shadow Fleet on a silver platter. Almost simultaneously, on September 19th, 3 armed Russian MiG-31 fighter jets violated Estonian airspace for a full 12 minutes. This was no accident. It was a deliberate provocation to test the response time of NATO's Baltic air policing. The response was swift. Italian F-35 jets stationed in the region immediately took off and intercepted the armed Russian jets at the NATO border. The incident was so serious that Estonia called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. These tests, conducted by drone from the sea in Denmark and by fighter jet from the air in Estonia, were a precursor to the harassment of the nuclear base in Belgium. Putin tried to test NATO's resolve and found a tougher wall each time. And of course, while these military provocations were taking place, the propaganda machine was not idle. Dmitry Medvedev took the stage, as usual. Medvedev, immediately after the drone incidents in Belgium, threatened to completely destroy Belgium in a statement he made on November 1st. This is the Kremlin's classic strategy. Failing militarily on the ground, then trying to win at the negotiating table with nuclear threats. But this bluff isn't fooling anyone anymore, especially not the Russian people. On one side, there's Medvedev threatening to destroy Belgium, the heart of NATO. On the other side, there's a bitter reality. For 14 months, the Russian army has been unable to capture even Pokrovsk, a small Ukrainian town with a population of only 50,000. What Russian citizen can ignore this contradiction? While their leaders talk about striking the US coast with Poseidon torpedoes, their armies have been stuck in a town for months. This huge gap shows how meaningless Putin and Medvedev's words have become to the Russian people. Putin's efforts to win allies are just as tragicomic. Who do you think Medvedev was meeting with in Sochi during the same days? A group of politicians from Germany's far-right AfD party. The only allies Putin and his regime can find are Europe's marginalized, far-right figures. This is not the diplomatic portrait of a world power, but of an isolated pariah state. The propaganda front cannot cover up the failures on the ground. On the contrary, it makes them even more visible. So what was the real reason that pushed Putin into such a risky, such a foolish blackmail move? Why did the issue of frozen assets cause him to take the risk of harassing a nuclear base? The answer is simple. Because this move in Belgium was Putin's last card. On all other fronts, Russia had been experiencing an unprecedented strategic suffocation over the past 2 months. The lifelines of the war machine were being cut one by one. One of the most strategic strikes of the war took place on November 2nd. The Ukrainian Security Service and Navy struck Russia's Tuapse oil refinery with long-range kamikaze drones. This was no ordinary refinery. Tuapse was Russia's only oil refinery on the Black Sea coast and one of its busiest export hubs. The result of the attack was a complete disaster. Officials reported that oil exports from the port had completely stopped. This meant that Russia's main fuel pipeline to China, Malaysia, Turkey, and other Asian countries had been cut off. Within just a few days, billions of dollars in revenue evaporated. Putin's war machine was being choked off from the south. While this was happening in the south, the Baltic lock was tightening in the north. On October 31st, Lithuania made a strategic decision to halt the transit of Russian oil products to Kaliningrad by rail. A glance at the map is enough to understand the significance of this. Kaliningrad is Russia's fortress in the middle of Europe, cut off from the mainland. Its only supply route passes through Lithuania and Poland. Poland and the Baltic states had already largely closed their land borders. Now, Lithuania's decision to cut off this last oil transit has critically weakened Kaliningrad's military and civilian supply lines. Putin's Baltic stronghold has been abandoned to its fate, transformed into a logistically strangled island. Finally, following the Pushpa incident in Denmark, scrutiny of Putin's shadow fleet has reached a ruthless level in the Gulf of Finland and the Baltic Sea. Those mysterious tankers have now become military targets that NATO navies must hunt down. Ships can no longer leave the port of St. Petersburg. The Gulf of Finland has become a giant parking lot for Russian tankers. The capacity of the port of St. Petersburg and its refineries has been halved because they cannot find ships to sell their oil. In short, Russia's only refinery in the Black Sea, Tuapse, is gone. Its Baltic stronghold Kaliningrad is shut down, and its shadow fleet to transport its oil is trapped. That is why Putin panicked. That is why he took such a foolish risk to get to those frozen assets in Belgium, that last remaining money. The drones in Brussels were not the product of a strategy, but of the desperation created by this strategic suffocation. Ultimately, Putin's Brussels blackmail was one of his last grey zone cards, and that card blew up in his face in front of the whole world. While trying to scare and divide Europe, he sharpened NATO's collective defense reflexes. Not only did he fail to recover his frozen assets, but he also unwittingly gifted NATO a new and faster drone defense doctrine. Putin's hybrid warfare strategy was stopped by a shield of his own making in the skies over Brussels. So who footed the bill for this fiasco? Number. As always, the bill was footed by ordinary Russian citizens. Putin's hybrid war in the Baltic states, Denmark and Belgium, was the last straw that broke the European Union's patience. The EU has raised Schengen visa restrictions on Russian citizens to the highest level. What does this mean? It means that millions of ordinary Russian citizens are now physically isolated from Europe. It means waiting in line for months in front of consulates, undergoing the most rigorous checks, and probably still being rejected. Countries like the Baltic states and Poland had already almost completely stopped issuing visas. Border crossings were closed. Now, with Putin's latest move, the last doors to Europe for Russian citizens are closing. There is no land crossing, flights are limited, and now visas are effectively cancelled. Putin and his allies' actions have isolated their own people from Europe. The Russian people are trapped in consulates and airports because of their leader's war. This is the true picture Putin is presenting to the Russian people. An army that has failed to take Pokrovsk in 14 months, a ridiculous propaganda machine spouting nuclear threats, and millions of innocent people excluded from all of Europe because of blackmail to recover their leader's frozen assets. Every move that puts Putin and his allies in a tight spot directly impacts his own people and forces them to see the truth. So, what do you think about this? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay updated on new videos, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on notifications. Thank you for watching.